Hello again. Before I begin, uh, thank you for the response and encouragement on the last video. I know I'm still learning how to be a better communicator, and it's a process. So, thank you for the encouragement. It means a lot. So, today I figured I'd talk a little bit about my art journey. Um, so, I'd say my actual art journey started back in college. I was by then officially struggling in academics. Before then, I, wa- I wanted to be a scientist, and while I still while I still retain my love for science, what I what I've realized since is that my love for science was more as someone looking at the world of science from the outside and not as someone who does science on a daily basis. And I think there's still something, there's still some stuff that I've yet to figure out in that sense. I still have all of my textbooks, and I can't just give them away. Can't just give them away just yet. But either way, back then I was still struggling with that decision, and being someone who was really behind, falling behind on his in academics regularly for years, that does create a complex apart from the other kind of complexes. And my way out back then was art, but the way it started was uh, around that time I was reading a lot of comic books and manga, and I loved how it was the artist's way of communicating with their audiences, and that they love how, I don't know, I felt a sort of freedom emanating from them, that they're creating stories, and then they're not just delivering the stories to the audience, they're also having a conversation, and they're also talking about how they came across that story as well. So that is something that I liked, and of course I loved specific types of art styles. But what changed in later years was when I um, this happened, I think, after I started playing Dark Souls 2. It um, it really made me want to draw scenes and stuff related to fantasy. And as I started figuring that out, I gradually came across the online art community. I came across DeviantArt and the whole world of concept art in general. And what baffled me was all of the incredible works of art that I had seen so far, all the wallpapers that I had in my PC, and all the loading screen art, and all the cover art, and all of that stuff that I had seen and enjoyed so much in TV and animation and all the video games that I've loved growing up. One could say, uh, apart from my parents who did raise me, there was a secondary raising of me by video games. Anyway, what really struck me was that all of that art that I had seen, someone did that shit by hand. I don't know. I know it seems pretty basic right now, but for me back then it was a pretty crazy realization, one that I hadn't thought about before, and thus started me trying to figure out how to make it a more important part of my life. So apart from apart from studies and homework and whatnot, whenever I got time, I would start watching YouTube videos and start sketching in my sketchbooks. Especially after failing my first year of college, that's when I really started looking towards art as a escape, because back then there was this one aspect of life that I wasn't entirely terrible at, and I didn't need to prove myself in. I wasn't very good. I sucked pretty bad back then, and I'm still learning. Of course, it's always a journey, but I think that was one of those rare times where I found it acceptable to suck at something. It didn't bother me, and it was not there to. My sketches weren't meant to be shown to anybody, or they weren't part of any exam or test or public scrutiny of any kind. I somehow walked into a place where I could be myself, whatever the fuck that is. And I'm still realizing just now how fucking big that means. I can't stress the importance. Anyway, it started looking at um, a lot of comic book art back then. Um, Especially, I think a lot of people start off with the popular artists first, and of course they are all popular for a reason. And I just loved looking at the artworks of Jim Lee, and then later on, more importantly, of Mark Silvestri and all of his artworks from the Top Core universe. It's crazy how effortless he makes it look, and the intensity, and I guess another form of maximalism, maybe, of the comic book artworks, especially from the 2000s and 90s, that has always struck with me, and it made me want to draw stuff. It inspired me in more ways than one. And that, coupled with the kind of music that I used to listen to and I still do, mostly rock bands, like Linkin Park and Evanescence. It sets a mood, and I don't know. I just fucking love all of these, all these combination of things, and I still do. And it developed over time. At first, I was at first I used to be very scared of color, so it was just me figuring just sketching things and making sketches, then and then inking them. And then I learned about fine liners, so I moved from ballpoint pens to fine liners and learned cross hatching, and stumbled my way through the basics. And I guess for a while it was sort of limited to that, even if I was imagining bigger things, and it meant a lot to me. And I think I guess it was kind of a safe area for me to not try something that I'm not used to yet and be stuck in smaller spaces doing sketches of things that I know of. And I guess looking back in this context, um, this should have been the time where I could have pushed myself. And I didn't know that until further in my journey. So, a lot of things happened in my personal life, and because of circumstances, I was offered an opportunity to work in a really big company, and because of circumstances, I took up on that offer. And I think it was a difficult decision because around the same time, I I had a choice to make because a friend offered me another path of going into an animation course. He said that you're into all of these things, you're into art, why not get into animation as well? And that day, I still remember after college sitting in the train station. I may have let a couple of trains go by just thinking, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And over time, which with much difficulty and probably repressed hatred, I took up on the more logical choice of the more stable non-art job that would pay the bills, hopefully. And while this happened, eventually, and I think very quickly, I came to realize that this um, this might not be my place. But still, in the earlier days, I sort of figured figured out a way to coexist. Obviously, I think I'm clearly not the only one in the world to have faced choices such as these. This is quite a common conundrum for people, and we all make do with the cards that we are dealt with. But over time, what I realized is that I was having this crisis of identity, that I was somehow angry at everyone around me for what I thought was coercing me to, or uh, convincing me to be someone I'm not. This was my thinking at that time, and it sort of grew to a point where I was no longer able to continue living that life. And I now realize that it was, I wouldn't say it was all of the, it was 100% external thing, but it was a more of a culmination of me suppressing myself, or me expressing, not expressing myself when I, in ways I should have, for a really long time. And that sort of built up in me and gave way to other things, gave way to outbursts, and actually it gave way to, it gave way to my art. When I started therapy, the very first thing that my therapist said after looking at my art was that I see a lot of anger in you. So, what is it? And she asked me what it was about. And now I know what it was about. And this process of reflection and coming to terms with my anger is exactly why I do art. This is part of why I love the, why I'm attracted to the specific genre of art that I do. And it's also a good reason for the, for me being attracted to the type of music that I like. But in hindsight, I'm grateful for the way things unfolded, if that is the right choice of words. And because if I'd made different choices, then I probably would have may been a different person. And I don't think I want to be anyone else other than who I am now. Wow, it felt good to say that. Somehow I'm slightly less ashamed of myself now. Anyway, so that was a lot of talking. I mean, for me, and thank you for sticking with me so far. I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.